Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is Christopher Wallace. Christopher is the co-founder and president of InnerView, which is a marketing consulting firm that helps companies effectively transfer their brand strategy to their customer-facing employees and partners. Chris builds upon previous success as an entrepreneur in the sales consulting and coaching space, as well as his more than 15 years of sales, marketing, and corporate leadership. Chris's primary professional focus is to help companies better align the strategies of the boardroom with the daily execution at the front lines. Beyond his work with clients, Chris is able to apply his passion as a teacher and author. He has taught as an adjunct MBA professor at Temple's Fox School of Business and has been published in outlets such as Harvard Business Review and Chief Marketer, and is a contributor to publications including Inc.com and Forbes.com. Chris received a BA in Public Relations from Syracuse University's Newhouse School and his MBA from Temple University. He lives in Villanova, PA with his family. Without further delay, welcome Chris.
Thank you, Yannick. It's great to be here.
All right. Now, could you share with us how you ended up in this particular field, marketing and brand recognition and brand consulting, that kind of stuff? I see here on your bio, one of the suggested questions to ask you is brand dilution, which I'm quite eager to hear what your definition of that is. But before we get there, if you could just share with us how you ended up where you are today.
Sure. How long do you have? How long is the podcast episode? No, I'm just kidding. Just like anybody's story, it's a long and winding path, but I'm a salesperson by DNA, not by career, by DNA. It sort of runs in the family. And after a career in sales, or having a career in sales with a number of big recognizable brands, I found myself at a crossroads and had the opportunity to essentially work with one of the companies that I had been employed by for a number of years, and sort of flipped over into a contracting consulting role, and was sort of an overnight entrepreneur and an accidental entrepreneur, as I like to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was asked to do was to take some new products and new services that the company I used to work for was launching to their frontline teams, launching into the market, bringing to market to their customers, and really help get their frontline sales teams, their customer service reps, number of different teams really up to speed on what these things were. But it was a lot less training and a lot more just dialogue, how to talk about it, how to position it, how to relay the value. And sort of that opportunity, being at that crossroads, led to this career in really helping organizations understand how to align the things that they want to bring to market, their products and their services, with the people who have to talk about them.
Wow, that's a fulsome description of your journey. All right, so that took you into the teaching realm of it and also being able to connect or helping other people to connect. In terms of your brand story as a business, could you explain to us what that means? Let's say it's a new business owner that's listening to this podcast. He or she hasn't necessarily been able to communicate what their brand actually represents. What are some of the key indicators or facets that business owner would need to consider in order to pretty much pioneer how or navigate how the shaping of their brand is going to be perceived by others?
It's a great question. And I would say it doesn't matter if an organization is big or small. Your brand is your promise. What is your promise? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. What is the promise that you're making to your customers? What value do you bring to them? What makes you stand out? That's the brand story that we're talking about. And I know that occasionally the word brand can scare people. It sounds like a big concept. It sounds like, something for the Nikes of the world or the Coca-Colas of the world. But the reality is people have personal brands, smaller organizations have brands, and that brand simply comes back down to what your promise is to the customer, regardless of who your customer is. And any organization needs to take the time to really sit down and figure out what that promise is before you go out and start advertising it or whatever the case may be. You have to understand really what it is and internalize it first.
Agreed. All right, so that brings us to we're understanding what our promise is now. What is brand dilution?
So brand dilution is, and thinking about the topic of your show and customer experience, brand dilution is the difference between what you tell your customers you're going to do and what the customer actually experiences. It's really the breakdown in that promise, the breakdown in that message. And we did a research study earlier this year with 250 marketing and customer experience executives. And what we found was, I would say astonishingly, but it's not really that astonishing. 2/3 of marketers believe that their brand's message, their key brand story, is breaking down between their office and the people at the front lines. So they believe that there's a misaligned message inside their company. People are telling however many different versions of that story, of that brand promise. Mm-hmm. And if the organization promises one thing through their advertising and their marketing, and they experience something different when they show up, that's a big problem for most brands. So that's really what we talk about with the dilution, is that gap between what is promised through external marketing and what the customer actually experiences.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you say that it's a breakdown, because marketing and advertising costs a whole lot of money, and organizations have extensive budgets dedicated to marketing and advertising their businesses every single year. Whether, as you said, they're large, medium, or even small organizations, you will allocate a quite a percentage of your income or, reserves or capital to ensure that the business is marketed and advertised. Could you explain to us why is it you believe that many companies fall into the delusion, and are they disillusioned or are they deluded really in thinking that there's a communication breakdown, or is it that the team members who are actually serving the customers are not clear on what it is they're supposed to be delivering?
I think it's both, to be honest with you. And really the research that we did, the study we published earlier this year with a market research firm called Focus Vision, a consumer insights company called Focus Vision.
Right.
What we found was it's really twofold. The organization is attempting to sort of spread this story via, the main methods they use are email and product training. Those were the top two things that rose to the top of the list each time, and how we asked them, they were really communicating and engaging their people. And ultimately, when we looked at the data, that wasn't driving results. That wasn't driving alignment. It was a set of other tactics that were really driving the companies who were good at this to be successful. And just sending things out via email or doing a product training, that's not going to drive the customer experience that you want. It's not getting through. It's not cutting through the noise. So I think that on one hand, you have the organization who's probably not doing as much as they should to get it downstream and get the message out to their front lines. And then you have the people at the front lines who, you used the phrase disillusioned. I don't think they're disillusioned. I just think that their organizations have failed to equip them in an interesting and compelling way. And I think that people at the front lines, whether you're on the phones or in a retail store, whatever that looks like, you need to be engaged in a new way. You've got a lot of things being thrown at you. And if the organization is not treating you as a consumer of the information and just treating you like kind of a link in the chain, then the dilution is bound to be there.
So basically then, you're kind of reinforcing the fact that customer experience starts from within.
That's correct. Our slogan is win from within. So we're big believers that the customer experience needs tremendous attention. It needs tremendous investment, and it's an investment that pays off in a big way.
Do you have any statistics? I know you said you used Focused Vision was the name of the company that does insight intelligence. Do you have any research that pretty much supports, let's say, the ratio of how much companies invest to market and advertise per year versus how much they invest in training and development and customer experience training per se?
So we don't specifically on that, but I can tell you this. When we asked the executives in our study what they thought the value of a consistent brand message was. So we asked specifically for those people that thought that their organization was pretty well aligned in their brand message throughout their company, what was that worth to their organization? 62% of those people valued it at $10 million, more than $10 million annually. So nearly 2/3 put an actual revenue tag, a revenue price tag on an aligned brand story at more than $10 million a year. So we look at that and say, organizations don't realize necessarily how much money is slipping through the cracks. One interaction here, one interaction there. But when we asked these folks point blank, they said, well, yeah, actually, the success of our marketing plan, the success of our brand really does depend on winning one conversation at a time. And when you start to add up with the losses, more than, and I stress it was more than 10 million. That was the category they selected, was more than 10 million annually. Who knows how much it could actually be for the organizations we studied? It could be 10, 20, could be $50 million or more, depending on the size of the organization.
And not because they're not measuring it doesn't mean that there isn't something slipping through the cracks.
Yeah, I think that it's one of those things where I'm sure Yannick, and from the guests that you've had on, measuring it, I think, is perceived to be hard. Measuring the impact of customer experience is perceived to be hard. I frankly don't think it's that hard. Every engagement that we do, we focus on very tangible revenue-based metrics around just improving the quality of the interaction between the frontline team member, that what we call a brand representative, and the customer. If you improve their ability to tell your brand story, you are going to earn more business. And if you just measure it the right way and you look at the right metrics, it's not that hard to quantify.
Could you give us one or two metrics that organizations could look at, even if they're a small business with just, say, 2 or 3 people employed to them versus an organization with 200 or 300 people employed to them?
So metrics, I would say it really depends on the type of business. I mean, conversion is sort of the mother of all metrics that we work with. So when you think about, even as a small business owner, an entrepreneur, looking at your pipeline, regardless of what you sell, and really determining what percentage of those deals, what percentage of those opportunities you're able to convert into a sale, and really getting that to be a metric that you track over time. This is all about, like I said, winning one conversation at a time, right? If you win one more deal here, one more deal there, I know for me as an entrepreneur that matters. But if you think about these larger organizations, and that's really who we work with mostly, is these larger organizations, one conversation here and one conversation there across, in some cases, tens of thousands of reps or retail employees, that adds up really quickly, and it adds up to a lot of money. So I would say conversion is really the number one metric to be tracking.
And do you think there's one question that you think all companies should ask their customers about their experience?
Oh, that's a tough question. I know the one that they pay a lot of money to ask, and that's how likely are you to recommend this product or service to a friend or family, right? That's the NPS. NPS, we work closely with some NPS customers, as Fred Reichheld would call it, the ultimate question, right? That's the title of his book. But in terms of asking it's so hard to say that one question can actually capture it. I'm gonna answer a question with a question. I'm gonna say that when we talk to organizations, there's a question that we ask their executives. We ask the question, how confident are you that the people who represent your brand can tell the story the way that you built it? And that's sort of our measure of trying to figure out if they have alignment issues with their brand internally. How confident are you that the people who represent your brand can tell the story the way that you built it? And if you're talking to a product owner or a brand owner or somebody in consumer marketing, really the answer to that is it's kind of a moment of truth question for them. And we rarely hear that there's a lot of confidence. So I would say to any business owner, if you have other people out representing you other than just yourself, ask yourself that question. How confident are you that the people representing you can do it the way that you want it done every single time?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Builds a lot of introspect for you to really think about the individual or the company or the set of people that are representing you and the platform that they're representing you on. And are they really telling the story the way how you built it to be told?
Absolutely.
Amazing. All right. So, Chris, could you share with us how you stay motivated every day as a marketer, as an entrepreneur, as a teacher?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot, so I feel like I have a good answer to that question. At least I know the answer. The motivation for me, I'll tell a quick story. When I was getting my MBA, I had a project that was being done toward the end of the program that was all about, you had to do a map out a strategy for your career. You had to treat yourself as the client, and you had to map out a strategy for your career. And the leader of that class, the professor, asked me what I wanted to do, what my strategy was, and I said, I want to manage people. And he said, well, where or how many? And I said, I don't know, just as many as I can. And so my answer is, I think about the team that I've constructed, the team that I've built, and what motivates me is the chance to add somebody else to our team. It's really that simple. Offering somebody the opportunity to come and work with us, bringing them into the fold for the family that we're building here is really, really motivating to me. That's what I work for every day. And when I sell, I look at an opportunity to develop a new client and work with a prospect as any new client that I can bring on is a potential chance for me to add more people to my team. So that's what motivates me every day.
All right. That's good. Now, could you share with us what's the one online resource, tool, website, or app that you absolutely can't live without in your business?
Tool that I absolutely can't live without in my business. Right now, I'm going to give my CRM a plug. We have Zoho, CRM Plus is our CRM, and it's a wide-ranging platform. For those aren't familiar with Zoho, it's a great software package. You can do a lot with it just beyond CRM, things like some sales automation, some marketing automation. But we use that tool, and not being a process-oriented person myself, I've really become attached to going and updating the CRM, working the pipeline, running the reports, things like that. So adding some discipline around that has made it a pretty indispensable tool.
Great. All right. So Zoho CRM is the tool, website, or app that Chris listed as the app that he absolutely can't live without in his business. And so we'll have the link for that app in our show notes of this episode. Now, Chris, could you share with us what books have had the biggest impact on you?
I would say the one that I think really motivated me the most to really build around what we're doing as a career and really commit to it was when I read To Sell is Human by Daniel Pink. For the listeners who aren't familiar, Daniel Pink is, part of I would say the new age author that's really talking about, a lot of similar things to like the Malcolm Gladwells of the world, the Simon Sinek's, sort of a new age management thinker. And, his premise in To Sell is Human is everybody is selling in some way, shape, or form. And whether it's as an entrepreneur or in your personal life, you're selling all day long in just about every role, and really embracing that and figuring out how to tap into the ability that everybody has, to the need that everybody has to be able to influence and reach those around them. I just thought it was a very straightforward, easy to digest concept, but one that many, many people in our line of work resist the idea that they're in sales. And we try to help make them a little bit more comfortable with it. That book's a great way to do it.
All right. So we'll also have the link to that book in the show notes of this episode. So for those of you that would like to grab a copy of that book by Daniel Pink, you will definitely have access to it. Now, Chris, we have a lot of listeners who are business owners and managers who feel they have great products and services, but they lack the constantly motivated human capital. If you are sitting across the table from that person, what's the one piece of advice that you would give them to have a successful business?
Lacking motivation of human capital.
Correct.
I would say the number one piece of advice that we give to prospects, to listeners, we have our own podcast as well, is the best thing you can do if you want to get somebody to do something, the best thing you can do is start by listening to them. And you think about sales for those of you who are good salespeople and have gotten some training and consultative selling. Everything's about learning. It's about asking questions. It's about identifying needs. It's not about talking. So I would say that it's a simple answer, but the best thing you can do if you want to motivate somebody is start by asking them questions. Ask them what they think. Ask them what they care about. Ask them their viewpoint. Because if you can understand them, you can find the ways to connect with that individual and get them to, really line up behind your mission, behind the tasks that you want them to do.
So listen to the person that you're speaking to, whether it's your team member or your employee. And after listening, you need to ask really good questions to understand what they want and where they're coming from, because those things will help you to be more developed in figuring out what is motivating them, which 9 out of 10 times is not only financial, correct?
100% agree with that. There is such a huge misconception, Yannick, that that people are, as they say, coin operated. You put in another quarter and people will do what you want them to do. But the reality is the intrinsic motivation is much higher. When people talk about engagement and engaging employees and things like that, I don't think most people know what that actually means. Engagement is that people feel part of something. It's that they feel like they're part of the process. They're part of the mission. They just want to feel like the work that they're doing is impacting something bigger, and they want to feel like it's happening with them, not to them. Mm-hmm. And the best way to build that relationship and that trust is start by asking them things and asking their point of view, and genuinely being curious to hear the answer. It can't be with an outcome in mind. It has to be with true curiosity.
Agreed. All right. So, Chris, what's the one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about? Either something that you are working on to develop yourself or your people.
Thing that I'm really excited about. You can probably tell I'm easily excited. I get excited about a lot of things that we are doing. I would say that probably the thing that gets me most excited day to day is we are really trying to define the experience. You talk about customer experience. We're a boutique consulting company, but we have spent a lot of time as a team talking about what experience we want to deliver for our clients. And I've challenged my partner, and I have challenged our team to really look at that and internalize what it is we want them to say, how we want them to feel, and really find ways to deliver that experience and really think outside of the norm, right? Really think of new ways to do that. And we are developing a new set of sort of criteria for how we interact with our clients. Mm-hmm. That is probably, I would say, as an entrepreneur, the most energizing conversation I ever had was when we sat down. We had a team offsite earlier this year, and we asked the team to think through how they wanted the customer to feel, what they wanted them to say. And then the ideas that came out of that for showing our customers our clients how much we appreciate them, that's going to really take shape toward the end of this year and into next year. And I just can't wait to see that come together, because it's all about us being genuine and treating our customers, our clients, in a way that feels like us. And I can't wait to see that come together.
All right, brilliant. And we are very excited to hear when that launches, how we can all tap into having that experience with you as well. So for those persons that are listeners to this episode for today, can you tell them, Chris, where they can find you online after they've finished listening to this episode?
Sure. Well, the best place to learn more about the company, it's InnerViewGroup.com, and it's INNER viewgroup.com. We help organizations take an inner view of their brand. So InnerViewGroup.com is a great place to learn more about the company. For me as an individual, great place to find me is on LinkedIn, very active on LinkedIn. And you can find me at my extension for the URL is Christopher E. Wallace. So Christopher, middle initial E, Wallace. But if you just do a search, you'll find me, Chris Wallace. I'm in the Philadelphia area. So there are many Chris Wallaces, just a warning. So I have a very common name. So, but Chris Wallace, Philadelphia area, and you'll see the little interview icon, and feel free to reach out and connect with me.
All right. Okay, Chris. Now, before we wrap up our interview today, we always like to ask our guests, what's one quote or saying that during times of adversity or challenge, they like to kind of revert to this quote or saying? It kind of helps them to refocus, to re-strategize, and just remember what they're working towards. Do you have one of those?
I do. So there's a quote that motivates me. So I'm a big music lover, and there's a band that a little bit obscure, probably not the most mainstream band in the world, but there's a quote in one of their songs that says, "It's all been luck until now." And I really internalized that quote. Anytime I look at successes or challenges that I face as an entrepreneur, as an individual, I really go back to that idea of treat everything as if you just got lucky to this point, mm-hmm. because it motivates me to keep working hard. So it's all been luck until now is, maybe the luck will run out and you'll have to rely on your hard work and your skills. So I sort of treat every day as if every day previous to that was luck. And now it's time for me to focus on, continuing to work hard. So that motivates me every day.
Brilliant. All right. So we're going to have that quote as well in our notes for this episode. So thank you so much, Chris, for taking time out of your very, very busy schedule to share with us all of these nuggets on brand dilution, how to interpret your brand story, how to get that message across, that key critical question you should be asking yourself to identify if the people you have out there working with you and representing your brand are really telling the story how you designed it to be told. And of course, most importantly, looking from inside on your customer experience to see if it is exactly what you want it to be so that it can be manifested on the outside. We really appreciate it.
Of course, Yannick, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And so I just want to remind our guests that they can connect with us on Facebook at our private Facebook group, and it's called Navigating the Customer Experience Community. And of course, feel free to follow us on Twitter at NavigatingCX. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.